Hi, this is Sam Blau. Welcome back to the Maryland Science Center for some more kitchen sink science. So to get started for making caramel, we're going to need a few ingredients. We've got some light corn syrup, and this is going to be half a cup. We've got 1 cup of heavy whipping cream, and we've got 1 cup of granulated or plain white sugar. We've also got half a stick or 4 tablespoons of butter, and we're going to need some vanilla and some salt. Other things that you're going to need is a source of heat. We've got our hot plate. You probably have a stove at home. We've got our saucepan. We need a spoon, and we're going to need a candy thermometer. Now, you may not have a candy thermometer at home, but if you've got a meat thermometer, it'll work just fine. Just make sure it's clean before you use it. So, let's get started then. We've got our saucepan. We are going to add to this our cream and sugar. So we're going to pour in all of our cream. Just scrape that down in there. I'm going to add in our sugar and stir that in. We're going to season it with a little bit of salt. It's about 1/4 teaspoon. And you can find this recipe on our website, marylandsciencecenter.org, and look for the Science at Home page. And we've got all sorts of fun science things to do at home on a snow day, including making caramels. Okay, so we've stirred that in. We're just going to get a little bit of salt going here. Stir that in as well. We're going to start to put this over our heat, so set at a medium setting, and we're just going to stir and make sure that we incorporate this as it starts to heat up. So this part will take a little bit of time. Gonna add in my corn syrup. Scrape all that sticky stuff down in there. And we're gonna start to combine. Okay, so we know that all of the sugar is combined when it becomes a sort of thinner consistency. It goes from being really thick to just a little bit thinner, and there's a consistent color to it. And that's how we know that it's pretty well combined. So now we're going to add in our butter. Make sure that all of the wax paper is off your butter, because nothing ruins a caramel like wax paper in your mouth. We're going to stir this in. Make sure all the butter gets melted in. Okay, so our butter is almost melted. We're going to need to get our candy thermometer. And again, if you don't have a candy thermometer at home, you can use a meat thermometer. Meat thermometers don't always have a nice little clip on the back for clipping into your pot. And so what you can do instead is you can either just decide that you're going to check your candy temperature every few minutes, by holding your thermometer into the liquid sugar, or you can rig up with a rubber band your thermometer against the side of the pot using a handle and a rubber band. So I'm going to make sure that actually the bulb of my thermometer just gets down in there a little bit more. I'm going to slide that up. There we go. Excellent. Oops. And what we're going to do when all of that butter is melted in, we're going to stop stirring. And this is the really hard part of the candy making process, where you have to just back away and let it do its thing. And we can look at it, but we don't want to touch it. We're going to let that sugar go from a liquid state to a, well, still liquid, but caramelly state. So we've got to let it do that all on its own, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So it's a wait and see process. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I will wait, and while we're waiting, I thought I'd show you guys the science behind what's going on there. So we'll let you guys in on what's happening inside our pot while we're not touching it. So when we are making caramel, there's a couple of different things going on. There's something called a Maillard reaction, there's caramelization, and then there's something called pyrolysis. So our ingredients that we had milk, which has fat in it, it's got proteins, and it's got sugars. We added a lot more sugar as well. So the milk can go through something called a Maillard reaction, where the proteins actually start to combine with some of the other elements that are inside there, and they can start to have a browning process. And that's what's happening when you sear a steak. It starts to get brown, not because of caramelization, but because of the proteins starting to rearrange themselves a little bit. But we added a lot of sugar in there, and that is caramelization. And so caramelization is when sugar starts to brown. And so that can happen a lot when we are doing baking or cooking candy, for example. And I mentioned pyrolysis. So caramelization is an example of pyrolysis when an organic material, like sugar, that's a natural organic material, starts to get heated up so much that actually the hydrogen atoms break away from carbon atoms, and they rearrange, join up with some oxygen in the air. We get a little bit of steam, and then what's left behind is some charred carbon. So I want to show you guys that here. We're going to speed this up, and we're going to use a lot of heat, which is why I've put on my safety goggles. So this is not an at-home one. Your at-home is going to be the caramel, but that's okay. It's tastier than what I'm about to make. So I'm adding a chemical. I'm adding potassium chlorate down here. And then I've got some gummy bears. So those are our little nuggets of sugar that we're going to quickly caramelize with pyrolysis. So I'm going to pick one out there. We're just going to get our heat. So I'm going to melt this powder down into a liquid, and that is going to accelerate our caramelization of this gummy bear. Okay, we've got a liquid. Here we go. It's still going. So sometimes in the circle of science demonstrators, we refer to that as the gummy bear sacrifice, because we are no longer left with a gummy bear, but with a charred lump of sugar stuff. And if you guys were here, you'd be able to smell it. It smells like burnt marshmallows, which is kind of a really nice campfire smell. And so that was our sped up version of caramelization and pyrolysis, what's happening very slowly over in our pot. So our pot is still going, and we're actually going to wait for this to reach the temperature of 248 degrees. So this will take probably the next 30 minutes. So, you know, if you want to like throw on some Netflix or something like that, we're cool with that. And then we'll come back and see what it looks like at the very end. Okay, so through the magic of television, you may have noticed we actually switched our burners. We were using an electric one, and it just wasn't getting quite hot enough. So we switched to gas, and much more quickly we are able to get a hot pot. So it is almost ready. Just gonna check on it. Okay, so it is just about there. I'm going to get my vanilla ready so we can pour that in, turn off the heat, and pour it out. So there's a little vanilla for flavor. I'm gonna turn the heat off. I'm gonna take it up off the heat, add in that vanilla. Take out our candy thermometer. That's sticky. We're gonna give a little stir and get ready to pour. So we've brought our sugar mixture to caramelization because it's nice and browned, and to what we would consider sort of a firm candy texture. It's not super soft. Well, it looks super soft right now, but in just a moment as it cools down, it will cool down to not super icky sticky, but a nice kind of firm, chewy caramel consistency, which is what we're looking for. Now, if you happen to be like me and you really enjoy toffee, you could use this same exact recipe, keep cooking it up a few more degrees, wait till it gets just a little bit darker, and then do the same thing. You can add vanilla or not add vanilla, pour it out, and then it'll be a harder toffee consistency. You just let it cool, and then you can break it apart into pieces, add it to your favorite ice cream if you, again, are like me and you like toffee ice cream. Okay, so we're gonna let that guy cool down, and I happen to like salted caramel, so I've got a nice flaky salt I'm just gonna add on top. Maybe a little more. There we go. And then once it's cool enough to handle with my fingers, I can use a butter knife and just cut it up into squares or rectangles, whatever shape I desire. And the wax paper is for wrapping it up so that you can save it for yourself or maybe to share with some friends. So we hope that you guys enjoy our snow day treat, and tag us, let us know if you made this or what other kinds of candies you guys are making at home on your snow day in.